While millions of people schedule their lives around kickoff times, cancel plans because of playoffs, and emotionally rise and fall with the performance of strangers, there's a quieter group that still doesn't care. Not secretly, not casually, genuinely. And what's fascinating is that the more you analyze them psychologically, the clearer it becomes. This isn't a lack of emotion, it's a different relationship with control, meaning, and identity. Most conversations about sports indifference stop at personality labels. They're introverted, they're intellectual, they're not competitive. But that's surface-level thinking. Psychology shows something deeper is happening, something that explains not just sports apathy, but how these people approach life itself. Let's start with an uncomfortable truth. Sports fandom is emotionally efficient. You get excitement, belonging, drama, and resolution without having to risk anything personally. You don't have to train. You don't have to fail publicly. You don't have to improve. You just watch, react, and feel. For many brains, that's an ideal deal. But for people who don't care about sports, that emotional efficiency feels empty. Psychologists call this locus of control, whether you feel fulfilled by outcomes you influence or outcomes you merely witness. People who are indifferent to sports tend to have a stronger internal locus of control. Their brains resist investing emotionally in systems where their actions have zero impact. No matter how intense the game gets, they know at a gut level that their stress won't change the score. So instead of feeling excitement, they feel distance. Not boredom, distance. This is why sports conversations often feel surreal to them. When someone says, "That loss ruined my whole week," the non-sports brain doesn't judge, it just doesn't compute. The emotional math doesn't add up. Why suffer over something you never touched? This isn't superiority, it's wiring. Now let's talk about identity compression. Sports fandom gives people a ready-made identity. Team colors, rivalries, shared language, a sense of us. For many, this is comforting. Identity is hard to build alone. Sports make it communal and automatic. But people who don't care about sports often resist identity compression. They don't like reducing themselves to a single banner. Their sense of self is usually more layered, built from skills, values, ideas, aesthetics, or personal projects rather than group affiliation. Psychologically, this correlates with higher identity complexity, the ability to hold multiple self-definitions without needing one dominant label. These people are less likely to say, "I am my tribe," and more likely to say, "I am my choices." That's why sports fandom can feel suffocating to them. It demands emotional loyalty without personal authorship. And here's where things get really interesting. Research shows that people with low interest in spectator competition often have higher sensitivity to emotional cost. They subconsciously calculate, is this worth my energy? If the answer is no, they disengage entirely. Sports fans pay that emotional cost gladly because the reward loop works for them. Non-fans don't get enough psychological return on investment. The dopamine isn't strong enough. The narrative doesn't feel personal enough. So their brains redirect energy elsewhere, usually toward things that grow. Creative work, learning, deep conversations, solitary mastery, relationships where feedback is direct and mutual. This is also why many non-sports people dislike loud sports environments. It's not about noise, it's about collective emotion contagion. Their nervous systems don't enjoy being flooded by collective highs and lows they didn't consent to. They're emotionally selective. And not selectiveness often comes with another trait, low tolerance for symbolic conflict. Sports are symbolic battles. Nothing truly changes when one team wins. No resources shift, no real-world threat is resolved. For people who don't care about sports, symbolic conflict feels pointless. Their brains are tuned to practical consequence. This explains why many of them gravitate toward philosophy, psychology, entrepreneurship, art, or introspective hobbies. They want emotional engagement that moves something, even if that something is internal. Now let's address a misconception that needs to die. People who don't care about sports are often accused of lacking passion, but passion isn't loud, it's sustained attention over time. And non-sports people often display extreme passion, just privately. They'll obsess over a skill for years, dive into a niche interest until mastery, replay the same song hundreds of times, reread books, rewatch films, rebuild their internal world again and again. Their passion just doesn't look communal. And because it's not visible on Sundays or game nights, it gets mistaken for absence. But here's the deeper psychological layer most people miss. Sports indifference is often tied to emotional self-preservation. Some people learned early that emotional highs followed by uncontrollable lows are destabilizing. Maybe they grew up in chaotic environments. Maybe they watched adults emotionally unravel over things they couldn't change. Maybe they learned that staying steady felt safer. So their nervous system adapted. They avoid emotional roller coasters that don't serve them, not because they're cold, but because they value equilibrium. This is why many non-sports people are calm during crises, why they think clearly under pressure, why they don't panic easily. Their emotional system isn't trained to spike over symbolic events, and that's not accidental. Now, does this mean sports fans are irrational or inferior? No. Sports provide meaning, ritual, and connection, real psychological benefits. But what matters is understanding that non-participation is also a strategy, not a deficiency. Two different brains, two different paths to fulfillment. One finds meaning in shared narratives, the other finds meaning in authored ones. One borrows emotion, the other earns it directly. And neither is wrong. So if you've ever felt out of place when everyone else was yelling at a screen while you just wanted to go home, read, create, think, or work, understand this. You're not missing out. You're opting out. And opting out is not apathy. It's agency. You're not disconnected from humanity. You're just not outsourcing your emotions to a scoreboard. And in a world constantly fighting for your attention, your outrage, and your emotional energy, that might not be a weakness at all. It might be the quietest form of control there is. If this made sense to you, the next thing you'll want to understand is why some people feel drained by group energy while others feel alive in it, and how that difference shapes your entire life without you ever noticing. That's not a personality trait. That's psychology.